It's it's been a while since the last episode. So what do I have in store for you guys after 3 whole months? A new operator, a broken one, maybe anything relevant to make up for this break? Nah, let's talk about the 6-star that most people consider to be the top 3 worst in the game. 3 years in, 1 controversy later, and here we are. Welcome to What's It Worth, where this time I'm only half clickbaiting a new unit. Today we are talking about the second ever post-release 6-star, Swordmaster Chen. Today's episode will not focus on the stats as I've realized they're kinda useless in isolation. Instead, I'll be focusing more on how these numbers interact with Purpleware examples. Chen is a Swordmaster which have lower attack than other branches, but 2 attacks in 1. Against low defense they have higher DPS, and against high defense they have lower DPS. You get the gist. While this may seem like a problem initially with how boosted defense gets, this branch only really suffers in Chapter 7 where everyone gets especially mega boosted defense. Against regular peons, their DPS is really high, which usually doesn't matter when skills are so important in this game. Can still be handy against problematic low defense enemies like castles or against decently packed enemy waves. Talent 1 is usually what people talk about. Plus 1 SP to all units with offensive or defensive charge every 4 seconds. While this seems really good at first glance, there actually aren't that many skills that benefit a whole lot from it. These kinds of skills are usually less useful than the operator's other skills, with the utility of their other skills surpassing the ones that Chen can actually boost. Like, you'd never ever use Rosmotis skill 1 over skill 2 or skill 3, and if you do, you're weird. Everything else like Great Throat and Liscam aren't as great due to how long Chen takes per SP, which only really helps if you specifically have like an entire minute where they aren't attacking and you need their skill up immediately. Special mention goes out to Vibeak, where depending on the enemy's attack speed, the talent could push Vibeak's SP per second to be able to perma-stun. It was used to great effect in Let's Seal Max Risk 9-up strategy, which No, you're kidding. Fuck Vibeak, I never want to see her face ever again. Talent 2 is nothing special, it's just a slight boost to her stats and giving her a small dodge chance. The most you'll see of this is Let's Seal 1P release with her dodging Mud Rock to activate skill 3. Otherwise, it's just a slight boost to her survivability and her DPS. Next, let's talk about her module. This seems really underwhelming initially, but it's actually pretty okay. Swordmasters have naturally low attacks, so any boost to that can put their DPS past a threshold that can kill more enemies. Attack speed also helps boost their SP charging by just a little bit. For the actual effect, this is specifically really good for skill 3. This is a final damage amplifier just like Suzerain. Basically, it boosts the damage after defense and resistance. Usually you want attack skill, which applies before defense, but with skill 3's already high damage, it's going to be boosted a significant amount anyways. It's roughly equal to like slightly less than an 11th strike, even at higher defense. Before we get into our skills, there's something relevant that we need to discuss. Duration skills versus burst skills. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to define burst skills as skills with no duration set. They are not infinite and are not auto skills. So Firewatch skill 2 is a burst skill, Silverash skill 3 is a duration skill, and you could even consider Fang S1 to be a burst DP skill. This is going to be important in understanding how and why you use those skills. Duration skills usually have higher total damage than burst skills. It's a trade-off damage versus speed. While most content has no need for a burst like this, CC is one place where the power of burst can truly shine. With limited deploy slots or constant pressure, you usually have to cycle ops to deal with specific threats at different times. Let's take Pyrite Gorge as an example. CN's Risk 27 used Weedy Burst to take down an entire group of fast-moving enemies at a spot where everything converges. And of course, you can't block the waves too. Compare this to EN, where we had Suzerain to instead slow these enemies down long enough for our full duration skill to finish everyone off. Unlike duration skills, you can guarantee that the skill's full damage is done. You don't need to stall, you don't need to account for enemy movement speed, and you don't need to worry about being killed. Of course, there's no one true answer, but rather, much like everything else in this game, many different solutions. Other maps like Windswept Highlands also allow for W or Firewatch bursts, and challenges like 4-star runs use Kata skill 1 to kill problematic enemies fast. So let's get into her skills. Skill 1 is a low SP charge skill with stun and pretty okay damage. This skill has some use to cancel enemy attacks, but due to how long she takes per skill usage, it can't perma-stun anyone as far as I know. Modulus has a cycle of 5.2 seconds, while Module gives her 4.93 second cycles. Even this isn't consistent due to her talent timings not matching this cycle, but assuming it matches the cycles, The most that she can cancel is a few hits before she inevitably gets hit herself. Basically, don't MP this unless you're a simp or you have really specific attack speed buff operators to reach 28 to 32 attack speed. Next up, the Chen skill 2. It was favoured early on, but there's a few problems with it that we've only realised later on. Let's start by breaking down the skill. 20 SP after 30 SP at Mastery Tree, allowing her to use her skill instantly on deploy, and it does high mix damage in front of her. So ideally, you'd want to use it as a nuke, right? Well, yes, but her DP cost is high, even higher than range guards. This skill used to be able to kill when junkmen were considered elites, but now any real elites or even slightly tough enemies can usually live. With these two factors in mind, skill 2 doesn't exactly excel at its heli drop instant burst niche anymore. It's too much DP for what is essentially a peon group killer. You can usually plan out ways to allow for better heli drop bursts, like waiting 15 seconds for a Savage 30-second clappening, or even just use other burst options. This skill just isn't that good outside of 1P relays. You could use it as a lane holding skill, but due to the relatively long cooldown and the lack of high track killing ability, it can't exactly solo. There are a few cases where it's still decent now though. H74 is a good example with her being able to OKO paratroopers in a pinch. Now, it's time for the one and only, the unique Chen skill tree. Sorry, who is this Guardmiya you're talking about? You're gaslighting me, get off here! Anyways, skill tree currently holds a cool niche of instant physical burst. It's really baffling to me how I've seen people who watch my videos of her nuking bosses dismiss skill tree's powers as just the enemy being weak. Despite her 10 hits reducing her damage against defense, Chen still does extremely high damage per hit that mitigates it somewhat. The extra stun at the end might not seem useful at first, but considering that you're using the skill on one priority target or to clean up peons, it can give you the time that you need to finish enemies off. There's also her invincibility while the skill is running, which was integral to how she claps Emperor's Blade and Black Knight. As a lane holder, it fares better than skill 2 due to the fact that it can actually kill strong enemies coming her way, while still being able to clean up peon groups with sheer brute force. Her range is another factor that's hard to describe, but it comes in handy way more than you might think. Well, obviously she can't use it to deal with like 3 lanes at once. She can ease the pressure off other lanes and snipe strong enemies on those lanes. She can even hack the game and attack enemies behind her, which is especially useful when waiting for an enemy to walk in front of her range. CC Beta was a really good show of this range where she dealt with both the mid lane enemies and Avengers on top. Because she's multi-hit, physical and attack skill, Chen gains massive boosts from just a single buff, and with that she's able to do things that other units can't in those two slots. CC5's Risk 31 by Pebble is something that I want to analyze for this video. Chen is here primarily to deal with the enemy shielders. At a whopping 1000 defense and with our own 45% attack debuff risk, they are a big enough threat that requires special attention. Chen is used to hold the lane for a bit, with her dual strike trait helping her deal with the enemies where they would usually stack up and either leak or kill the unit. Once Wolf is placed, Chen can easily cut through the shielder, and here's the most important part. Unlike her Savage who can definitely kill with buffs too, Chen's bursts allow her to instantly be undeployed and make space for other units. Her stun is also used in a really smart way here to stun the Blade Hounds to give time for Exo to kill it, before it debuffs anyone else. Now here's a comparison that I see very often. Guardmiya skill 2 versus Chen skill 3. Earlier I joked about this, but a lot of people seem to think that these two skills actually do the same thing. While they look the same, functionally they work very differently. Chen does Mega Burst by beating defense, and she loses around 30 to 40% of her damage to high defense. Guardmiya does arts, which means that against high res she's going to be losing 50 to 70% of her damage instead. Chen can get buffed to lose even less damage, while Guardmiya's damage loss is going to be a constant 50% regardless. The big factor is of course that it can only be used once. You could technically use it as a Chen skill tree against enemies with low resistance just once, but there's the second half of her skill too. In my opinion, the best way to use Guardmiya skill 2 is to kill multiple peons and focus on the true damage part, but regardless, past the base level of bursting one single enemy, these two skills are very different, and they should not be compared. I'm going to be blunt here. There are many operators that can clear content much more easily than her. She's not someone that I can recommend to a new player, but it's not like she's useless too. Her niche still finds use now even in CN, and she's, in my opinion, the most fun guard to use. I mean, just look at this. How's this not sick as fuck? The problem with her is that she requires very high investment, which I totally get why people are not ready for that. Skill tree, mastery tree is pretty much the minimum, and levels and modules are also very integral to using her. Unfortunately, Chowter's existence will also undoubtedly make the remaining guard Chen users few and far between, but she's definitely an operator I would not dissuade anyone from building if they wanted to. If you want to build her, a debuffer or a buffer is pretty much a must-have. Mess around with her, bully some patriots, and maybe some of you will come to love using her the same way that I do. Thanks for watching, like and sub, and goodbye.